The big white ship moved slowly through space. Its hull was painted with red crosses, the symbol everyone in the galaxy knew meant medical help. The UHMS Mercy's Light was the biggest hospital ship humans had ever built. It was 3 miles long and carried doctors, nurses, and medical supplies to help anyone who needed it. Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge watching the stars. She had been running hospital ships for 15 years. This was her favorite job because she got to save lives instead of taking them. The Mercy's Light had helped thousands of people from dozens of different alien races. Down in the medical bays, Dr. Paul Harrison was checking on his patients. The ship carried wounded soldiers from 3 different wars happening in this part of space. There were humans who got hurt fighting pirates, Zilani refugees who escaped their destroyed homeworld, and even some Korthak soldiers they had captured and were now healing. Dr. Harrison believed that once someone was hurt and needed help, it didn't matter what race they were or which side they fought for. A patient was a patient. The other doctors and nurses felt the same way. That was the human way. Nurse Katie White was in the children's ward playing with some young Zilani kids. Their parents had died when the Korthak destroyed their planet, but the kids were getting better. Katie made funny faces and told them stories to help them forget their sadness. The children laughed and called her their Earth Angel. Lieutenant Jake Foster sat at his communication station reading reports from other ships. Everything seemed normal. The war between the humans and Korthak had been going on for 2 years, but hospital ships were always safe. Everyone respected the medical ships. It was the most important rule in space warfare. Then the alarm went off. "Captain, we're getting a distress call," Jake said, putting the signal on the main screen. "It's a Zilani transport ship. They say they have wounded civilians and their engines are failing." Lisa looked at the message. The transport was only 6 hours away. "Set course to help them. Tell Dr. Harrison to prepare for new patients." The Mercy's Light changed direction and headed toward the damaged ship. Lisa felt good about this. Saving lives was what they did best. The crew worked fast to get ready for the new patients. They had done this hundreds of times before. 4 hours later, Jake's equipment started beeping. "Captain, I'm picking up 3 ships coming toward us. They're moving fast." "Can you tell what kind of ships they are?" Lisa asked. Jake worked with his controls for a few seconds. His face went white. "They're Korthak destroyers, Captain. Military ships." Lisa frowned. "Signal them and tell them we're a medical vessel helping civilians. Show them our hospital ship codes." Jake sent the message and waited. The Korthak ships kept coming closer. "No response, Captain. They're not answering our calls." "Keep trying. Send the message in their language, too." Down in the medical bays, Dr. Harrison was getting supplies ready for the new patients. He had 30 doctors and over 200 nurses working with him. They had saved thousands of lives together. Today would be just another day of helping people who needed it. Katie was still with the Zilani children. She was teaching them AI Simple Earth song when the lights flickered. "Don't worry, kids," she said with a smile. "Sometimes the ship has little problems with the power. Everything is fine." On the bridge, Jake kept trying to contact the Korthak ships. "Still no answer, Captain. They're almost here now." Lisa stood up. Something felt wrong. "Put the ship on alert. Close all the blast doors to protect the patients." "Captain," Jake said, his voice shaking. "The Korthak ships just powered up their weapons." "What? That's impossible. We're a hospital ship. Everyone can see our medical markings." The 3 Korthak destroyers came out of faster-than-light travel right next to the Mercy's Light. They were close enough that Lisa could see the weapons on their hulls, big guns pointed right at her ship. "Signal them again," Lisa ordered. "Tell them we have wounded Korthak soldiers on board that we're treating. Tell them we're protected under the Universal Geneva Accords." Jake sent the message. A few seconds later, his equipment showed that the Korthak ships had received it. They knew exactly what the Mercy's Light was. Then the Korthak opened fire. The first explosions hit the medical bays. Dr. Harrison was checking on a wounded Korthak soldier when the blast threw him across the room. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. People were screaming. "All medical staff to emergency stations." Dr. Harrison called over the ship's communication system, but half the medical bays were already destroyed. On the bridge, Lisa watched in horror as more explosions rocked her ship. Jake, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're under attack. Tell them the Korthak are firing on a hospital ship. Jake's fingers flew over his controls. Message sent, Captain. I'm also broadcasting on all frequencies so everyone can see what's happening. The second wave of attacks hit the refugee quarters. Katie was trying to get the Zelani children to a safe place when the wall exploded. She threw herself over 3 small kids just as metal and fire filled the room. Katie! One of the children cried. She looked down at them and smiled even though she was badly hurt. It's okay, little ones. The nice people from Earth will take care of you. Those were her last words. All over the ship, people were dying. The Korthak weren't just attacking randomly. They were targeting the medical bays first, then the areas where the refugees lived. They knew exactly what they were shooting at. Dr. Harrison crawled through the wreckage trying to help people. Half his staff was dead. The patients they had, worked so hard to save, were dying in their beds. Why? He whispered. Why would anyone attack a hospital? On the bridge, Jake kept sending messages even as the ship died around him. Earth Command, this is the Mercy's Light. We are under deliberate attack by Korthak forces. They know we are a medical vessel. They are targeting our patients and medical staff. This is Jake Foster. Tell my family I love them. The ship's main power failed. Life support was failing. Captain Lisa Martinez stood at her post as her ship broke apart. She had one last message to send. Earth Command, this is Captain Martinez of the UHMS Mercy's Light. They knew what we were. They knew we were here to heal people. They knew, and they killed us anyway. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them the Korthak chose to make healers their enemy. The Mercy's Light exploded in a ball of fire. Of the 3,000 people on board, only 127 made it to the escape pods. The rest died trying to save lives. The Korthak ships watched the hospital ship burn. Then they left, heading back to their territory. War Marshal. Thekevar would be pleased. The test was complete. Now they would see how the soft humans would respond. The video message from Jake Foster reached Earth Command 12 hours after the attack. Admiral Rick Torres was drinking his morning coffee when his aide rushed into his office with a tablet showing the emergency broadcast. Sir, you need to see this right now, the aide said, his face pale. Rick took the tablet and pressed play. Jake Foster's voice came through clearly as explosions rocked the ship around him. Earth Command. This is the Mercy's Light. We are under deliberate attack by Korthak forces. They know we are a medical vessel. They are targeting our patients and medical staff. Rick watched the entire message 3 times. Each time, his anger grew stronger. By the third viewing, his hands were shaking. He had been a military man for 30 years, but he had never seen anything like this. Get me President Clark on secure video. Now, he ordered. Within minutes, President Amanda Clark appeared on his screen from the White House. She was a calm woman who rarely showed emotion, but Rick could see the fury in her eyes. I've seen the footage, she said before Rick could speak. Tell me this isn't real. Tell me someone faked this. It's real, Madam President. We've confirmed it with 3 different intelligence agencies. The Korthak deliberately attacked a clearly marked hospital ship. They murdered doctors, nurses, and children. Amanda closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Rick saw something he had never seen before in any president. Pure, cold rage. How many survivors? She asked. 127 out of 3,000. Most of the medical staff died trying to protect their patients. And the children? The Zelani refugees? Rick's voice got quiet. Nurse Katie White died shielding 3 children with her own body. She saved them, but most of the others didn't make it. Amanda was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Harder. Rick, I want you to call an emergency meeting. Joint Chiefs, intelligence heads, congressional leadership, everyone. We meet in 2 hours. The meeting room in the Pentagon was full of the most powerful people in human space. Senators, generals, admirals, and intelligence officers all sat around a large table. The video from the Mercy's Light played on the main screen. When it finished, nobody spoke for a full minute. Senator Jim Parker was the first to break the silence. In all of human history, we have never seen anything like this. They didn't attack soldiers. They didn't attack military targets. They attacked healers. They murdered people whose only job was to save lives. General Pete Sullivan, the head of the Joint Chiefs, looked around the table. The question is, how do we respond? This isn't just an attack on one ship. This is an attack on everything we believe in. Commander Helen Brooks from Naval Intelligence stood up. She was a small woman, but when she spoke, everyone listened. There's something else you all need to know. We've been monitoring Korthak communications since the attack. This wasn't random, it was planned. She pressed a button and alien voices filled the room, translated into English by computer. The voices belonged to high-ranking Korthak officers. War Marshal Thekvar wants to test the humans, one voice said. He believes they are too soft to fight a real war. He thinks if we attack their healers, they will surrender rather than see more medical ships destroyed. Another voice replied, the hospital ship will be perfect. It will show the humans that nothing is safe from us, not even their precious doctors and nurses. The room erupted in angry voices. Senators shouted. Generals slammed their fists on the table. But President Clark held up her hand and everyone went quiet. So this was a test, she said. They wanted to see how we would react to the worst thing they could think of. They attacked a hospital ship to see if we would break. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out over Washington. They think we're soft because we try to save everyone, even our enemies. They think mercy is weakness. Senator Parker stood up. Madam President, I've been in politics for 20 years. I've seen wars start and end. But this is different. They haven't just attacked America or even humanity. They've attacked the idea that some things should be sacred, that healers should be protected, that children should be safe. He looked around the room. I say we show them exactly how strong mercy can be when it's backed by righteous anger. The room filled with voices of agreement. Everyone was talking at once until General Sullivan stood up. If we do this, it has to be total, he said. We can't fight this war like we've fought others. The Korthak have shown us they don't respect any rules. They don't care about civilians. They don't care about medical personnel. So we stop following rules too. Commander Brooks activated another screen. Our intelligence shows the Korthak Empire has approximately 40 star systems and over 100 billion citizens. They have been expanding for 50 years by conquering weaker species. She paused and looked directly at President Clark. They made one mistake. They assumed humans were weak because we prefer peace. They're about to learn the difference between preferring peace and being unable to fight. President Clark turned back to face the room. I want options, military options, industrial options. I want to know what it would take to not just defeat the Korthak Empire, but to remove it completely from existence. The room went silent. What she was talking about wasn't just war. It was the complete destruction of an entire civilization. Admiral Torres spoke carefully. Madam President, what you're describing is total war. The kind of war we haven't fought since our own World War II. Are you sure that's what you want? Amanda looked at the frozen image of Jake Foster on the screen, sending his last message as the hospital ship died around him. She thought about Katie White dying to protect alien children. She thought about Dr. Harrison trying to heal everyone, including Korthak soldiers. They killed our healers, she said quietly. They murdered children in hospital beds. They turned medical bays into slaughterhouses. And they did it to test us, to see if we would break. She looked around the room at every face. Well, they're going to get their test, but not the result they expected. She pressed the intercom button on the table. Get me a direct line to every news network and every colony world. I'm addressing the nation in 1 hour. President Clark's speech that evening was broadcast across all of human space. Billions of people watched as their leader stood behind the presidential podium, her face calm but her eyes burning with controlled fury. My fellow humans, she began. Yesterday, the Korthak Empire committed an act so horrible that it defies description. They deliberately attacked and destroyed a hospital ship. They murdered doctors, nurses, and children whose only crime was needing medical help. She paused and looked directly into the camera. The Korthak did this as a test. They wanted to see how humanity would respond to the unthinkable. They believe we are weak because we show mercy. They think compassion is a flaw. Her voice grew stronger. They are about to discover that our greatest strength becomes our greatest weapon when pushed too far. The Korthak Empire has chosen to make war on healers. They have chosen to make enemies of those who save lives. She leaned forward slightly. Therefore, as of this moment, I am declaring a state of total war against the Korthak Empire. Not war to defeat them. Not war to make them surrender. War to ensure that their empire ceases to exist. The president's final words would be remembered for centuries. They wanted to test our resolve by attacking a hospital ship. Consider that test complete. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. There will be only the complete erasure of the Korthak Empire from the galaxy. Across human space, the response was immediate. Shipyards that built civilian vessels began retooling for warships. Factories that made farming equipment started making weapons. Mining operations began digging for materials needed for the largest war machine humanity had ever built. The Korthak had attacked a hospital ship to test human resolve. They were about to learn that some tests have consequences that last forever. 6 months after President Clark's speech, the galaxy began to understand what human total war really meant. Every factory on Earth and the colonies had changed. Places that once made cars now built war machines. Shipyards that built cargo haulers now made destroyers. Even the peaceful mining colonies had become weapons factories. Dr. Amy Chen stood in her laboratory looking at plans that would have been impossible before the war. She had been a civilian engineer who designed equipment for asteroid mining. Now she was turning those same machines into weapons that could crack planets in half. The gravity drill was meant to break apart asteroids for mining, she explained to General Sullivan during his visit. But if we make it bigger and mount it on a warship, it can tear apart enemy ships from the inside out. She showed him another design. This used to be a cargo container system. Now it launches 1,000 missiles at once. We took every piece of civilian technology and asked one question. How can this hurt the Korthak? General Sullivan looked at the plans with amazement. How many ships can we build with these new designs? As many as you want, Amy replied. Every human world is working on this project. Mars is building engines. The Jupiter colonies are making armor. The asteroid belt is providing raw materials. We have turned our entire civilization into a weapon. At the Luna shipyards, Captain Steve Rodriguez watched his new ship take shape. The UHS Retribution was the first of the new Dreadnought class. It was 5 miles long and carried enough weapons to destroy an entire fleet. But it wasn't built just to win battles. It was built to end them completely. She's beautiful, said Chief Engineer Bob Kelly as he joined Steve on the observation deck. And terrifying. Each of those main guns can punch through a moon. Steve nodded. The Korthak wanted to see what happens when you make humanity angry. This ship is our answer. The Retribution was just one of thousands. Across human space, shipyards worked day and night building the largest war fleet in galactic history. Every ship had a name that reminded everyone why they were fighting. UHS Never Forget, UHS Katie's Vengeance, UHS Doctor's Oath, UHS Mercy's Thunder. Admiral Nancy Kim had been given command of the first total war fleet. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, UHS Absolute Justice, watching thousands of ships gather in formation. Her fleet was bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Status report, she ordered. Her aide, Commander Larry White, read from his tablet. 50,000 combat vessels ready for deployment. 2 million support ships. 300,000 fighter craft. All armed with the new weapon systems Dr. Chen's team developed. Nancy looked out at the endless rows of ships. Each one was painted black with red crosses on the hull. Not medical crosses, but memorial crosses for those who died on the Mercy's light. And the special units? She asked. Major Chris Taylor reports that the ghost units are ready. They've been training for psychological warfare. Their job is to make the Korthak afraid to sleep at night. The ghost units were something new in human warfare. Major Taylor had volunteered for the program after seeing the hospital ship footage. His team wasn't meant to fight normal battles. They were meant to break the enemy's will to fight by showing them that humans could be anywhere, anytime. Go. Studied every Korthak world. Taylor explained to his team during their final briefing. We know their culture, their fears, their weaknesses. We're going to hit them where they live and make them understand that attacking a hospital ship was the worst mistake they ever made. His team of 50 soldiers had trained for months. They learned to move like ghosts, strike like lightning, and disappear like smoke. Each soldier carried a personal message. Every attack would end with the same words painted on the walls. Remember the Mercy's light. Meanwhile, diplomats from the Korthak Empire were desperately trying to prevent the war they had started. Sub-Marshal Krethan arrived at the neutral station where peace talks were supposed to happen. He had orders to negotiate some kind of settlement. Before the human fleet arrived, Ambassador Bill Jackson represented humanity at the talks. He was an older man who had spent 30 years making peace between different species. But this time was different. Sub-Marshal, Bill said as they sat down at the negotiation table, my government has sent me here to deliver a message. Krethan leaned forward hopefully. We are prepared to offer compensation for the unfortunate incident with your medical vessel, perhaps territory or trade agreements, or even prisoners of war. Bill shook his head. You call it an unfortunate incident. We call it the deliberate murder of healers and children. You attacked a hospital ship to test our resolve. He stood up and looked the Korthak diplomat directly in the eyes. Well, the test is complete. You wanted to see how humans respond when you cross lines that should never be crossed. You're about to find out. Bill placed a data pad on the table. This contains the complete battle plans for our response. We're sharing it with you because we want the galaxy to understand that what's about to happen was entirely your choice. Krethan picked up the pad and read it. His face went pale. This isn't a battle plan. This is a plan for genocide. You intend to destroy our entire empire. Yes, Bill replied simply. You attacked healers. You murdered children in hospital beds. You did it as a test to see if we were weak. The answer is no. When pushed far enough, humans become the most dangerous species in the galaxy. He headed for the door, then turned back. Your War Marshal Thekvar thought mercy was weakness. He's about to learn that our mercy was the only thing keeping you safe from our wrath. Back on Earth, factories were running 24 hours a day. Workers who had never thought about war were now building the largest military force in galactic history. Sarah Miller worked in a plant that used to make farming equipment. Now it made plasma cannons. My daughter wants to join the Navy. When she turns 18, Sarah told her coworker during their break. She says she wants to make sure no one ever attacks a hospital ship again. Her coworker, Tom Brown, nodded. My son is already in training. He says every human child should grow up knowing that some things are worth fighting for, like protecting doctors and nurses. Across the colonies, the story was the same. Humanity had unified like never before. Rich and poor, civilian and military, every human world was working together for one purpose. The Korthak had wanted to test human resolve. Instead, they had created something they never expected. They had turned the most peaceful species in the galaxy into an unstoppable war machine. President Clark visited Dr. Chen's laboratory to see the new weapons personally. Are you sure these will work? She asked. Amy smiled grimly. Madam President, we've taken every piece of technology we ever built for peace and turned it into an instrument of war. The Korthak think they know how to fight. They've never faced an entire civilization that's decided to stop holding back. She showed the president a holographic display of the galaxy. Red dots marked Korthak worlds. Blue dots showed the positions of human fleets. In 3 months, Admiral Kim's fleet will reach the first Korthak system. They'll find out what happens when you make healers your enemy. They'll discover the price of testing humanity's resolve. President Clark looked at the display for a long moment. They attacked a hospital ship. They killed Katie White and Dr. Harrison and Captain Martinez. They murdered children. She turned to face Amy. I want them to understand that mercy isn't weakness. I want them to learn that the only thing more dangerous than human anger is human determination. Show them what total war really means. The arsenal of democracy was awake. The galaxy would never be the same. The first battle of the Total War began at the Korthak fortress world of Tekmor. Fleet Admiral Tony Garcia commanded the human assault force from his flagship, UHS Final Answer. Around him, 50,000 human warships moved in perfect formation through space. All ships, this is Admiral Garcia, he announced over the fleet communication system. Today we begin Operation Hippocrates. We fight not for conquest but for justice. Remember the Mercy's light. Remember Katie White. Remember why we're here. On the planet below, Korthak defenders watched the human fleet arrive. They had expected maybe a few hundred ships. Instead, they saw an armada that stretched beyond the horizon. General Vektar, the Korthak commander, stared at his screens in disbelief. "How many ships do they have?" he asked his aide. "Sir, our sensors can't count them all. The number keeps growing. It's like they brought their entire civilization to fight us." Captain Dana Lewis commanded the assault carrier UHS Mercy's Vengeance. Her ship carried 10,000 Marines and enough firepower to level a continent. But she had special orders from Admiral Garcia. "Attention Korthak forces," Dana broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Captain Lewis of the human fleet. You have 1 hour to surrender all military personnel and evacuate all civilians from military zones. Any military target that remains active after 1 hour will be destroyed completely." The Korthak commander laughed when he heard the message. 1 hour? Do they think we're children? We have orbital defense platforms, ground-based missile systems, and 1 million soldiers. Let them come. Exactly 1 hour later, the human fleet opened fire. The attack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships didn't just shoot at targets, they erased them. Orbital platforms that had stood for 100 years simply vanished. Ground installations turned to dust. Military bases became empty craters. But the most frightening part was the precision. Every shot hit exactly what it was aimed at. Civilian buildings next to military targets were untouched. Schools and hospitals were perfectly safe while the army base next door was completely destroyed. Colonel Andy Miller led the first wave of ground forces. His Marines landed in the capital city and began securing military installations. But they moved differently than normal soldiers. They didn't fight to capture territory. They fought to eliminate threats. "Korthak Military Command, this is Colonel Miller," he announced as his forces surrounded the main army headquarters. "You have 10 minutes to surrender. After that, this building will be removed from existence." The Korthak general inside was furious. "We will never surrender to you humans. We are warriors. We fight to the death." "As you wish," Miller replied. 8 minutes later, a human ship in orbit fired a single shot. The entire military headquarters simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not damaged, gone. Where a 10-story building had stood, there was now empty ground. Across the planet, the same thing happened at every military target. Korthak forces that tried to fight were eliminated with surgical precision. Those that surrendered were taken prisoner and treated well. The message was clear. Resistance meant death. Surrender meant safety. But the humans had something special, planned for the man who had ordered the hospital ship attack. War Marshal Thekvar was located in a bunker, 50 miles underground, surrounded by his best soldiers. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Davis led the special operations team sent to capture him. They didn't use the front door. They used Dr. Chen's new mining equipment to drill straight down through the rock. "Surprise," Sarah said as her team appeared in the middle of Thekvar's command center. "War Marshal Thekvar, you're under arrest for the murder of medical personnel and civilian refugees." Thekvar reached for his weapon, but Sarah was faster. She stunned him with a non-lethal weapon and had him in restraints within seconds. "Take him to the ship," she ordered her team. "The galaxy wants to see justice done." The trial of War Marshal Thekvar was broadcast across known space, but it wasn't held in a human court. Instead, representatives from every species that had lost people to Korthak aggression sat as judges. Humans merely provided security. The evidence was overwhelming. Video footage showed Thekvar giving the order to attack the Mercy's light. Communications intercepts proved he knew it was a hospital ship. Witnesses testified that he had planned the attack as a test of human resolve. When asked if he had anything, to say Tekvar stood proudly. I regret nothing. The weak deserve to die. Healers are for weak species. Warriors don't need doctors. The tribunal found him guilty of crimes against all civilized species. The sentence was death, to be carried out by human forces as the representatives of the victims. But the humans had one more surprise for the galaxy. They broadcast a message to every world in Korthak space. The message appeared to come from the Ghosts of the Mercy's Light's crew, created using advanced holographic technology. Captain Martinez's image appeared on every screen. We were healers. We saved lives. We protected the innocent. You killed us for showing mercy to all species, including your own soldiers. Dr. Harrison's ghost spoke next. We treated your wounded. We healed your people. We asked for nothing in return except the right to continue helping those who needed it. Finally, Katie White's image appeared, surrounded by the Zalani children she had died protecting. I gave my life to save children. Not human children, not my own people. All children. Because that's what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. The message ended with all the ghosts speaking together. You wanted to test our resolve. You wanted to see what happens when you attack healers. Now you know. Now the galaxy knows. Some lines should never be crossed. The psychological effect was devastating. Korthak soldiers on dozens of worlds began surrendering without a fight. They had been told humans were weak. Instead, they faced an enemy that could appear anywhere, strike with perfect precision, and whose very dead seemed to speak from beyond the grave. Major Taylor's ghost units appeared on Korthak worlds throughout the Empire. They didn't fight traditional battles. They struck at night, left their message, and vanished. Remember the Mercy's Light appeared on buildings, monuments, and military installations across Korthak space. But the ghosts weren't the only psychological weapon. Human ships began broadcasting the final messages from the Mercy's Light before every battle. Jake Foster's last transmission played on every frequency as human forces approached. This is Jake Foster. Tell my family I love them. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them the Korthak chose to make healers their enemy. The effect was immediate. Korthak military units began surrendering en masse. They had been told humans were soft. Instead, they faced an enemy that remembered every injustice, honored every victim, and fought with the fury of angels protecting the innocent. Within 6 months, half the Korthak Empire had fallen, not conquered, liberated. Human forces moved from system to system, eliminating military targets and freeing the civilian populations that had been enslaved by Korthak expansion. On each world, the same message was broadcast. The Korthak Empire is finished. Not because we conquered you, but because some actions have consequences that last forever. They attacked healers. They murdered children. They tested our resolve. This is the result of that test. President Clark visited the liberated worlds personally. On each planet, she met with the civilian leaders and delivered the same message. Humanity seeks no territory. We want no tribute. We ask for nothing except that you remember what happened here. Remember that the Korthak Empire fell because they chose to make war on healers. Remember that mercy is not weakness. Remember that some lines should never be crossed. The Korthak military leadership realized too late what they had done. They had attacked a hospital ship to test human resolve. Instead, they had awakened something that would not stop until their empire was completely erased from the galaxy. The test was nearly complete. The final lesson was yet to come. 2 years after the attack on the Mercy's Light, President Amanda Clark stood in the ruins of the Korthak capital city. The once mighty empire that had ruled 40 star systems was gone, not defeated, not conquered, erased from existence as a political entity. Behind her, construction crews were already rebuilding the city, but this time it would be built by free people, not slaves. The new government would be led by the species the Korthak had conquered, with humans serving only as advisors. "Madam President," said General Sullivan as he joined her on the observation platform, "the last Korthak military unit surrendered this morning. The war is officially over. Amanda nodded, but she didn't look happy. A war that should never have happened. All of this because they wanted to test our resolve by attacking a hospital ship. She activated her communication device and sent a signal that reached every world in the galaxy. Representatives from hundreds of species would hear her words. This message was for all of them. People of the galaxy, she began, her voice carrying to every corner of known space. Today marks the end of the Korthak Empire. Not because we conquered them, but because they made a choice that had consequences they could not escape. She paused and looked directly into the camera. 2 years ago, the Korthak attacked the UHMS Mercy's Light, a clearly marked hospital ship. They murdered doctors, nurses, and children. They did this as a test. They wanted to see if humanity was too weak to respond to the unthinkable. Her voice grew stronger. Let this be understood by all civilized species. Humanity seeks peace. We heal the wounded. We protect the innocent. We extend our hand in friendship to all who will take it. But harm our healers, target our innocent, and you will learn why our species survived the journey between the stars. Admiral Torres, now serving as Secretary of Peace, was establishing the new Mercy fleet on the former Korthak homeworld. These weren't the same hospital ships that had existed before. The new ships carried the most advanced medical equipment ever built, but they were also protected by defensive systems that could stop an entire fleet. Captain Jennifer Walsh commanded the flagship of the new fleet, the UHMS Never Again. The ship was twice the size of the old Mercy's Light and could treat 1 million patients at once, but it also carried enough defensive weapons to protect itself, and any ship that threatened it would face immediate destruction. Captain Walsh, Admiral Torres said during the ship's dedication ceremony, your mission is the same as those who came before you. Heal the wounded, save lives, show the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength is our compassion. He paused and looked at the massive ship behind him. But this time, anyone who threatens a medical vessel will face immediate and total destruction. The galaxy has learned that attacking healers carries a price no empire can afford to pay. On the bridge of the Never Again, Dr. Paul Harrison stood where Captain Martinez had once commanded the Mercy's Light. He was one of only a few survivors from the original hospital ship, and he had volunteered to serve on the new vessel. Doctor, Captain Walsh said as she joined him, are you ready for our first mission? Dr. Harrison looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were people who needed help, just like before. Captain, I've been ready for 2 years. Let's go save some lives. The Never Again launched from the shipyard and headed for the outer rim, where a plague was spreading among the mining colonies. As it left, other ships of the Mercy fleet followed. Dozens of hospital ships, each one protected by the most advanced defensive systems humanity could build. Governor Mark Thompson was overseeing the rehabilitation of former Korthak worlds. The process was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of ruling as conquerors, humans were helping the liberated species build their own governments. The key, he explained to a gathering of former Korthak officials, is that we're not here to replace your government with ours. We're here to help you build something better than what you had before. On the planet of Velka, former Korthak slaves were learning to govern themselves. Maria Santos, a human advisor, was teaching them about democracy and freedom. Your children will grow up free, she told a group of Velkan parents. They will never again live under the rule of an empire that sees them as property, and if anyone tries to enslave them again, they will find that humanity remembers its friends as well as its enemies. The transformation was remarkable. Within months, the former Korthak territories had become the most peaceful region of the galaxy. Trade flourished. Art and culture bloomed. Children who had never known freedom were learning to read and write and dream. But the most important change was in how the galaxy viewed hospital ships. New laws were passed by every major government. Any attack on medical personnel or facilities would be considered an act of war, not just against the species being helped, but against all civilized peoples. Senator Jim Parker, now heading the Galactic Medical Protection Treaty, spoke at the signing ceremony. The Korthak Empire fell because they believed mercy was weakness. They learned too late that mercy is strength, and those who attack it will face consequences beyond their imagination. Back on Earth, memorials were built to honor those who died on the Mercy's light. In the center of each memorial was a statue of Nurse Katie White, her arms spread wide as she shielded the alien children she died protecting. Children from all over human space came to visit the memorials. They learned about Katie and Dr. Harrison and Captain Martinez. They learned that heroes aren't always soldiers. Sometimes heroes are nurses who die protecting children. Sometimes heroes are doctors who treat everyone equally. Sometimes heroes are ship captains who go down with their vessels rather than abandon their patients. President Clark made one final visit to the memorial before stepping down from office. The war had aged her, but it had also shown the galaxy something important about humanity. "Katie," she said, speaking to the statue as if it were alive, "I hope we made you proud. I hope you know that your sacrifice meant something. The galaxy is safer now. Medical ships are protected. Children sleep safely in their beds." She placed a wreath at the base of the statue. "You showed them who we are at our best. What came after showed them who we are when you attack our best." Dr. Harrison, now serving as Chief Medical Officer of the entire Mercy Fleet, gave the final speech at the memorial dedication. Katie White died protecting children who weren't even her own species. Captain Martinez died protecting her ship and everyone on it. I survived to tell their story. To make sure the galaxy remembers what happened when someone tried to test humanity by attacking healers. He looked out at the crowd of thousands who had come to honor the dead. The Korthak Empire is gone. 40 star systems have been liberated. Billions of people are free. All because some people thought it was acceptable to murder doctors and nurses. He paused and looked directly at the galactic representatives in the audience. Humanity will continue to heal. We will continue to help. We will continue to show mercy to all who need it. But let this memorial remind everyone that those who attack healers, who target the innocent, who test our resolve by committing unforgivable acts, will learn that mercy has guardians. The memorial was dedicated with a simple inscription that could be read in every known language. They attacked a hospital ship. They learned why that was the last mistake their empire would ever make. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity remembered everything. They forgave much. But some